Live from the Florida Times Union, welcome to the Act to Vote 2008 debates, sponsored by the League of Women Voters, Jacksonville.com, and the Florida Times Union. Today's debate features Stan Jordan and Ken Manuel in the runoff election for the Duval County School Board District 1 seat.
And good morning, I'm Dan Scanlon, veteran reporter here at the Florida Times Union. We're doing a live video online debate. This time we have the two candidates for the District 1 School Board race here in Duval County. They are State Representative Stan Jordan and School District Administrator Ken Manuel. They are both running for a nonpartisan race to take over the seat that's being vacated by the outgoing member, Martha Barrett. The questions have been vetted to us by the League of Women Voters. The questions were sent to us via email. Each candidate will get 1 minute in an opening statement, and then we will dive into the questions, and they'll get 2 minutes to respond to those. Most of the questions are for both candidates. Some will be pointed toward one or the other, depending on what the readers have requested. So let us get going here. Good morning, gentlemen, and let's dive in with the opening statement. Mr. Manuel first.
I'm Ken Manuel, an educator and a candidate for the Duval County School Board for District 1. For the past 38 years, I've actively and passionately served the Duval County school system as a teacher, principal, elementary director, and regional superintendent. My 7 years as a teacher, 16 years as a principal, and 15 years as a district administrator has provided me with the knowledge, leadership, and planning skills that are essential to become an effective school board member. The Florida Times Union, Duval Teachers United, Fraternal Order Police, and Jacksonville Chamber of Commerce have all endorsed me as the best candidate. Current school board members Martha Barrett and Kathy Shemp has also endorsed my campaign. As our school district moves toward becoming a school system of excellence for all students, it will need school board members with visionary leadership, commitment to change and innovation, and willingness to place students first in the decision-making process. I'm asking you to consider me for your vote on November the 4th.
Mr. Jordan.
I'm Stan Jordan. I'm a candidate for school board, and I'm proud to say in the primary, which had 4 candidates, our campaign won first place in 31 out of 37 precincts, and we only spent $10,900, which is about a tenth of what the other 2 candidates spent. I've been a teacher and a principal and an administrator. I've been on the school board. I was chairman 4 years in a row. I have a master's degree in education. I am a certified administrator from K through 12. I'm a retired military aviator, retired full colonel in the Army. I have a successful business. I have over 50 employees. I've met a payroll. I have, for the past 8 years, I've been a member of the Florida House of Representatives, where I was chairman of the Military and Veterans Affairs, and I've been on the committee for K through 12 in education in the Florida House of Representatives. I have some serious concerns about where we are and what we're going to do. We have some real issues that we need to discuss this morning. Thank you.
Okay, now it's time to dive into these questions. Most of these have come, like I said, all of them have come from emails from readers and vetted by the League of Women Voters. So the first question, and we'll start with you, Mr. Jordan. Do you support the magnet school programs as they are today? Will they work in support of academically high-achieving students or abandon them to work on failing schools?
Well, you've given us 1 minute to answer a very complex question. We have 2 minutes.
You have 2 minutes.
We have 2 minutes. Thank you. We have a very, very good magnet program in Duval County. The proverbial question is it a talent brain drain on the community high schools? When you think we have 13 out of 19 of Duval high schools that are unsatisfactory or failing, it gives us serious concern as to what impact this is having with the community high schools. Now, out of the 6 that are not unsatisfactory and failing, 3 of them are our magnet schools, Paxson, Stanton, and Douglas Anderson. Now, the question is, should you abandon these programs? And my answer is no. I would not abandon them, but what I would do is place the emphasis on the community high schools to put the strongest leaders we can and make them markedly attractive and make sure they're safe and have some excitement and enthusiasm, just like you do in business. I have 3 businesses I own. When the market is down, you've got to change the marketplace, and that's what you can do with this. One thing about the magnet schools that a lot of people have not factored into the equation as to their value, they are helping us spread out the utilization of our existing inventory of space. And if you did not have these magnet schools and you brought them back, you would have some schools in dwindling communities where the population is declining, and you might find that you have some empty classrooms. This does spread out the use. It is solvable. We can solve it, and I think we need to look at how we can upgrade them. And I would have the strongest leader in the district in these schools, because one of the major problems with the high schools in Duval County is parents don't feel they're safe. And you have to have a safe school. A parent should not have to worry about their child in the school, and that's something we need to change.
Mr. Manuel?
The magnet program obviously is a good program. It allows us to allow students to go to schools for specialized curriculum. However, I think as you look at this particular district, we have a total of 55 magnet schools. I think we need to go back and take a look at, do we really need 55 magnet schools? As it relates to whether or not the magnet schools are significantly impacting our high schools, I think we have to take a look at the culture of our high schools and how it relates to our magnet school programs. You look at some of our most successful magnet school programs, and I was the regional superintendent for all of those successful magnet school programs. I think we have to take a look at how do we get the rigor in our neighborhood schools. And there are ways that we can do that through post-secondary types of programs. I agree with Mr. Jordan. Obviously, when we have 13 of 19 of our schools that are not performing, we need to take a very serious look at the high school culture. We need to break that high school model into small, personalized learning communities so that we can personalize learning for boys and girls at those particular schools and explore the possibility for career academies for those particular schools.
Okay, the next question comes from a reader, and it's specifically aimed at you, Mr. Jordan. What significant laws did you sponsor, not co-sponsor with others, in your 8 years in the state legislature, and why return to the school board?
Well, first of all, I don't think our journey in life is complete just because we finished one tour. I have sponsored many laws, a lot of them I was chairman of the Military Affairs Committee, and some of the things that we've done. In fact, I just had a press conference last week, which is not on the military side, which certainly affects the learning and culture of 2.3 million of our Floridians. For an example, I had a dental bill, which definitely will affect children and learners. If a child has a toothache, it's hard to concentrate. I don't care what kind of computers you have. I don't care what kind of curriculum you're trying to employ. If a child is not well, they will not be a learner to their extent that they're capable of becoming. I passed a bill, and we just signed it last Thursday, where we will allow dentists from outside the state to be able to, that are retired or former military, to come into the state of Florida and provide services in our health clinics to 2.3 million recipients of Medicaid in the state of Florida that are not getting any dental care of any significance now because of the pay. They're not allowed to. The regular dentist profession, they really don't want them as patients. Now, I want you to think about a lot of these will be children that aren't getting dental care. If you have an abscessed tooth or a cavity or a toothache and that child's trying to function in that classroom, it's not going to happen. But I'm proud to say that with this bill that will effectuate change in a lot of our young people, and particularly their senior citizens' parents, this will be a significant impact on dealing with some of the root problems that the education community in the classroom can't deal with. And that's why we have to approach all of this from a total community perspective.
Okay. Question for both of you gentlemen. What do you know about the state mandates for character education and anti-bullying? How is the Duval County Public School District ensuring that the laws are being implemented? Mr. Manuel?
The Duval County Public Schools have been involved in character education for several years. The schools use character education. They have specific themes involved with the character education and the actual bullying as far as the laws are concerned. The Student Code of Conduct that Duval County Public Schools uses spells out specifically about bullying. It spells out specifically the consequences that are involved if a child is involved in bullying. And I think that speaks clearly to what the Duval County Public School System, how they address the bullying aspect of it.
Mr. Jordan?
Well, first of all, I think you ask about character education and bullying. I think character is one of the most important components in our struggling society. And I think even the way you run your campaign defines the character of a candidate. And I would like to make sure I hold to the highest standards of that behavior. The three best forms of leadership are example, example, example. And I think we need to instill this in the character teachings and the life of our students, whether it's pre-K or in our 12th grade, that we lead by example. And that can be that can be carried out throughout the system, and it doesn't cost any money. Now, as far as bullying, look, no child should ever be threatened. I don't care for what reason. And I came from a culture of on the east side where I was raised in a community that was very, very rough. And I've seen my share of intimidation and bullying. I have never supported, nor would I be a part of any child ever being afraid or intimidated. We've had recent incidents here in Jacksonville where yesterday we had shots fired at Ribault High School. Last week we had a child in First Coast High School that was stabbed. That's why I said the safe school encompasses all of these components. The safe school concern that we should have in this community would be that we are going to make sure that a parent does not have to worry about their child in school, whether it's bullying or whether it's a serious life situation like we've had in these past week. I think that we can do this. I'm excited about seeing some of the examples of strong character teachings in our county, and we've got them. We got some wonderful teachers doing this.
Gentlemen, next reader question. What is your experience in the classroom, Mr. Jordan?
Well, thank you. I've had experience in the classrooms from K through 12. I was a military flight instructor. I've taught in the military academy, training enlisted people to become officers in the United States Army. I've had all types of opportunities to speak at universities and graduate schools. I've certainly been a principal. I had the honor of being a principal of the school that I attended as a child. It's a school that nobody wanted. And we had an exciting school, and I used the same techniques of teaching as a principal that I did as a teacher, which is to make sure you understand as a teacher, there are no boring subjects, just boring teachers. Napoleon said it best, there are no poor military units, only poor military commanders. And I think if you've been a successful teacher, and I hope that I was, and I get comments from students over all these years that come back and tell me how much they appreciate me. And I've taught a variety of subjects from flight school to math to all the other subjects that one could be engaged in teaching. And I've also taught on the industrial side in business. I was a director of industrial operations in the military, where we had to teach all kinds of subjects from safety to equal opportunity employments.
Mr. Manuel?
My experience as a teacher goes all the way back when I was a classroom teacher beginning at Long Branch Elementary School back in 1965. I've taught elementary grades. I've taught in middle school. I've worked at the district level as a resource teacher, actually going out visiting teachers who were not experiencing success. The bottom line, I've taught in the classroom for 8 years. Presently, I worked as an adjunct professor and taught school administration classes at Jacksonville University. I've also taught classes with Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, working with their state directors. My whole experience of the 38 years of those experiences, over 10 of those years have actually been there in the actual classroom, working specifically with either teachers or teaching adults at the graduate level.
Okay, our next reader question is, now that teaching to the FCAT, quote unquote, has proven to turn out students who cannot reason, is it time to do away with this test? If not, why not, Mr. Manuel?
Well, first of all, the FCAT gives us some basic information that we need to know. The FCAT test, the actual assessment of that particular test, is a high stakes test. When we go back and we look at the actual FCAT and what it actually entails, higher order thinking skills are not always assessed by that particular test. So we need to go back. Throwing the FCAT out I would say absolutely not. We don't need to throw it out. We need to revisit how the FCAT is actually being used. If it's used as an assessment tool to give us information as to what the kid actually does not know at the beginning of the school year, and if we can use a similar type of exam at the end of the year to actually determine here's what the kid actually knows using the same instrument, that's a better use of that particular test. That's a better use of a tool that teachers would actually be able to use to plan instruction for boys and girls, and we can determine whether or not those particular children are actually moving forward, and we can assess then our high thinking order skills.
Mr. Jordan?
You know, accountability is here. You're not going to change that. Now, in the early 70s, we had the high school competency test, which all students had to pass to graduate from high school. In 1996, we had the Sunshine State Standards. The Sunshine State Standards were revised in 2006. The FCAT is based on the Sunshine State Standards. These are the standards that are set aside as the levels of competency that a student should have mastered before they can move forward. Now, there's a question about, are the teachers teaching the test? I think when you break that down, you're going to find out that the standards are constant. If you're teaching the standards that are in the Sunshine State Standards, which is where the FCAT came from, the genesis of it, you're going to find out that it could be interpreted as teaching the test. Now, I think that I have asked this question of the Chancellor of Education just as early as April, where I said I think we may be misapplying some of the potential of this. If we're going to have a diagnostic tool by which to measure where a student is, then we should be able to benefit from that diagnostic tool to help that student. Unfortunately, some of the timing of the FCAT, where it's given, the writing part is given in February, and then by the time you take the rest of it and the results are in, sometimes the student's already gone. So the diagnostic potential of that test, I think, is lacking. You will find that we have, in the recent action of the legislature, we did change some of the measurement tools of the FCAT to improve the participation and enhance the participation by teachers and graduation rates and other things. So it's not the test itself today that determines a grade for the school.
Gentlemen, what are your plans to put discipline back into the schools? When will the Duval County school system be an excellent source of education? And we'll start with you, Mr. Jordan.
Thank you. Well, you know, without discipline, you have nothing. I as a military commander, I can tell you, the proficiency of your unit or your troops will depend upon the level of discipline that you've attained. And you can have the best computer, the best curriculum, ratio, whatever you want in a school, and if you don't have discipline, you have nothing. And that's one thing where strong leadership comes in on behalf of the principal. The principal is the manager and the number one person in that school. And that's why we need to make sure and ask our superintendent, and it's his responsibility, to give us the strongest principals that you have in our schools so that they will set the example and demand respect and discipline. And that's one of the major tenets of my campaign, is that you must have high standards of discipline and achievement. And they are linked together. You show me a school that's well disciplined, and I'll show you a school that's achieving. And I can tell you that respect component has to be woven into discipline, and that starts with the principal. You've got to have a strong principal. You also have to employ the community in which the child lives. It has to be the home, the school, and the church, and the business community working in concert to make sure we have an environment in education that is conducive to helping each other. I can tell you that from personal experience, and I've said this earlier, if we had a mother like mine in these schools today, you wouldn't need the policeman, you wouldn't need anything, because my mother believed in drive-by whipping. She took care of me wherever it was, and there was no question in my mind about what respect I should render to that school. Now, we can do this again by mobilizing the community to help us, not only with discipline, but help us in areas like truancy. So we can do these things. You have to work as a community, and you have to work together.
Mr. Manuel?
All of the effective school research clearly talks about one of the major pieces in there is a safe and orderly school environment. The leadership of a school sets the tone.
Amen.
It sets the actual tone for that particular school. But also, the leader has to be an individual that is going to be able to engage not only his instructional staff, but be able to engage the boys and girls within that particular school. We talked about character a few moments ago. That's a piece also has to be built into the fiber and the instruction that goes on within that particular school. Show me a school where the kids understands responsibility, and I'll show you a school where there's no vandalism going on within that school. Show me a school where the school staff have actually went out and visited in the homes. They got to know the parents, got to know that particular community, and I'll show you a school wherein there's less fights that will go on in that particular school. There will be more involvement with the school and the home. It should be a home-school partnership. When you build a home-school partnership, you will have a very good school that's safe and orderly for boys and girls. I think the other piece in there that we sometimes miss when we look at the overall discipline, we have to have an instructional program wherein boys and girls in that particular program are successful. Many of the kids that misbehave in a classroom are doing so because they don't have the specific skills, and this is a way to get the teacher's attention.
Next question. How do you plan to work to get parents involved in their children's schools? Mr. Manuel?
Well, I think you have to, number one, get out and actually meet parents. As a former principal, one of the things when we've had a PTA and we only had X number of parents that showed up at the PTA meeting at school, we then said we need to take a look at something. Why not have the PTA meeting out in the churches? So we started having PTA meetings out in the churches. PTA meetings that occurred at the same night that it was prayer meeting night. So the minister would close out prayer meeting and we would open up PTA. But we had the parents there. We have to make sure, number one, though, that parents feel welcome to school. We have to have a culture that says, I value you as an individual parent coming to my particular school to get you involved. And we have to make sure our kids are ambassadors to actually go home and say to mom and dad, here's what's going on in our school. So when we ask them to come into the school, they feel comfortable, they know something about the school, and that you must, and I would say this, we must, as a school system, build bridges with other organizations within that particular community. Education is too important for a school to sit by the side on an island and basically say, we can do this. No, we need to get others in that community working, engaging parents, getting them actively involved in the school.
Mr. Jordan.
Well, I think you have to recognize where you are. In the 1940s, 85% of the homes were a working father, a mother that stayed home and was there for the children. In the 1990s, that same ratio had dropped to 20%. And no telling what it is today. Parents have children, but too many children have no parents. And I think that's what you're faced with today in the school. Too many times they want to treat the school like it's a laundromat, where we're the sanitizing component of society, be it discipline, goal setting, feeding them. And I think you have to recognize, by and large, whether you like it or not, that's where we are. So it takes a different tack to realize how are we going to effectuate change and create an environment of meaningful involvement. And too many times, PTA is a wonderful organization, but you can't depend on the PTA to carry this entire burden of meaningful community involvement. You've got to get out into the community and recognize that that community is also made up of businesses. When I was a school principal, I can assure you, I visited every business in that community. And when a child did not go to school, they would call me, and I'd take care of it right then, get in my car and go get them. It didn't take long for that word to get out. I also made it my business to make sure that every parent knew who we were, and we knew who they were, be it parent, grandmother, what have you. And I can tell you, it makes a big difference in the home and the school when you have meaningful community involvement in coordination and communication.
Okay, the next reader question is, do you believe that reducing the standards at schools like Stanton or any other high-performing school simply drops all students' learning experience to the least common denominator? We'll start with you, Mr. Jordan.
Well, when you talk about reducing the standards, you're talking about the infusion of students that have been moving from the F schools to these magnet schools. Is that the question?
I'm only reading what the reader has presented.
Well, let me assume for the purpose of answering that we're talking about students not being able to go to their school as a failing school or not choosing to go, and they're going to an accelerated school such as Stanton or Paxton or Douglas Anderson. Well, you know, the law of physics is quite clear. There's a mechanical lesson here. If you have a chain, that chain will only be as strong as the weakest link. And when you put a child into an accelerated program, like we would do, say, at a school like Stanton, nationally acclaimed academic IB school, and you're not particularly helping that child that's recently entering the school unless they can perform at that level. So what I think you have to do in this case is have a school within a school so that the child can escape the double F school into another school and yet still have a reasonable chance to enjoy success, or at least transition to the point that they can participate in the high-paced Stanton, Paxton, Douglas Anderson environment. And you know, unfortunately, out of the 6 schools we have that are not failing, 3 of them are the targeted magnets. We only have 3 community high schools that are not, which is, in my opinion, one of the most serious problems that we face. But we can do that without bringing down the academic magnets, if that's the question. It would bring them down. I don't think that has to be. That's a mechanical problem of organizing the school to where no child is penalized and no child being penalized either on the side of the accelerated magnet or on the child that's transitioning. So it can be done. It's just a matter of administrative leadership.
Mr. Manuel?
I think the question comes to be standards. As far as lowering standards, no. I think we live in a time when we are competing internationally, and we have to have high standards. And so I would not support the lowering of standards, period. I would support that we take a very hard look at how do we make a rigorous curriculum and rigorous opportunities for boys and girls in all schools. I also would support that as we continuously take a look at raising standards, that we put in place in every school appropriate safety nets so that we can assist those boys and girls who happen to be in a particular school or who happen to be in a program where they're not meeting success, give them that opportunity to be successful. But as far as the standards, we need to keep our standards high. We are competing internationally, and our boys and girls no longer are just competing against the kids in Duval and across the bridge in Clay County. We're going to be competing with kids that are in Japan. We're competing with kids in Brazil. I shared with someone a couple of days ago that I had an opportunity to spend 7 days in Campinas, Brazil, evaluating American schools there for Southern Association Colleges and Schools. If you look at those standards and what those kids are actually doing, we need to make sure our standards are equally as high.
If you were on the Duval County School Board right now, what would your vote be regarding the name of Nathan Forrest High School? And we'll start with Mr. Manuel.
Well, as far as my vote would be to take a look at changing the name of the school. I think the name of the school, there's a lot of history there, obviously, but I think when we look at the actual name of the particular school and the individual that it was named after, I think we would need to change the name of that particular school.
Mr. Jordan?
Well, I think this is a classic example of dealing with historical accuracy and political correctness. I would have to get all of the facts before me before I would make that decision. I would have to ask the question, was the massacre at Fort Pillow, was it investigated by the Congress? after the war, and what was the result? I'd have to ask the question, was the original group that this great debate is based on, which came out of the movement to protect some of the families that were being taken advantage of by many carpetbaggers that were rowing and pillaging the communities, was that the real purpose of the group? When the splinter group started doing things that were atrocious, what did General Forrest do at that point in time? Did he truly disband the organization? And if so, what was the historical timeline and what was the significance of it? If you start, the superintendent made a very interesting comment in this morning's paper. You're going to enter down a slippery slope if you start trying to rewrite and deal with history unless it's dealt with accurately and in focus. Andrew Jackson, for an example, we're named after. Ask the native Indians their opinion of him. You start Thomas Jefferson, never freed his slaves. Never. Robert E. Lee, we have a high school there. Robert E. Lee, upon taking command of the Confederate Army, freed all of his slaves. Finnegan School, Jeb Davis. You're going to go right down and get yourself into a historical quandary. And my position is, let's make sure that we know exactly historically what is correct, and then make the decision, and then measure the residual impact of what it would do, because we may have to go back to Calvert.
Next question. Do you believe that vouchers should be available to students stuck in F schools? If no, why not? If yes, would you stand up to the teachers union on this issue, and would you send your child to an F school? Mr. Jordan.
Well, first of all, I think you have to accept the premise that we as a society are committed to an educated community. I really, as an employer, and I have over 50 employees, I don't really care who taught you or where you went to school. I'm interested in it, but it's not the evaluation tool that I use. I want to, can you operate that computer? And I think when you look at some of the schools that we face, and I've made it clear from day one, there's nothing that a public school has to be concerned about with vouchers if it's properly run, if it's a properly run public school. So therefore, vouchers are no threat to me as a public school advocate. And I'm a public school product, public school advocate, public school teacher, public school principal. My children went to public school. My grandchildren go to public school. I have a daughter that's a teacher in public school. But I still think there's a time and a place, particularly with the crunch, and this is something we never talk about, the crunch of meeting the 2010 mandate of the constitutional requirement of class size. We are going to be looking for places to put children in an educational experience, and vouchers, I don't have a problem with it. Vouchers, actually, if you have a $7,070 cost of a public school child and we give a $5,000 voucher, we have really increased the net gain for the public school coffers by $2,000 a child. So it could be cost effective. There's ways that we can deal with vouchers that make sure they're a positive contribution. And as far as standing up to the teachers union, they know how I feel about this, and I've been an advocate of an educated society and community since the day I've been involved in public education.
Mr. Manuel.
Well, I think this is a clear difference, because I don't believe that we should be giving vouchers. I think we should make provision for school choice for those individuals to go to where they want to go, but not from the standpoint of taking the actual dollars that would normally be used for students within our school district, so that another child can go to a school outside of our school district or a private school. As it relates to standing up to the teachers union or anything of that particular nature, I have been an administrator and I have dealt with ineffective teachers and have dealt with them from the standpoint of dismissal. And so I think even though I've been endorsed by the teachers union, I think the teachers and the teachers union understand and realize point blank that it is about good teaching and effectiveness. And I would always support those things that are effective in helping boys and girls learn.
Next question, what about the district attendance policy and following through with consequences for absenteeism? Mr. Manuel?
The district absenteeism policy, I'm assuming that you're talking about the 20 days that been referenced?
Again, this is all I've got here on this paper is an email question.
Okay. Presently, the way the district absentee policy works, if a child has been absent for X number of days unexcused, then the school intervenes to make contact to try to find out why that particular child or individual was not in school. And that could be in the form of a referral, where a truancy or a person would go out to try to intervene from that standpoint. I think we have to look at why kids are truant. I think that's the approach of the lenses I would like to look at. Why isn't this kid coming to school? Let's dig deeper. Is it because there are some social factors there wherein the child does not have the needed things to come to school with? Is it a situation wherein that particular child does not feel comfortable in that particular school because he or she does not have the skills to perform in the actual classroom? And so I think we have to take a comprehensive look at the absenteeism and the truant to make sure that we do the right thing for those particular boys and girls and modify our way that we deliver services, because it has to be a wraparound service, and not only to the child who is absent or truant, but to his family that's there also.
You sir?
Truancy is the threshold and the gateway to dropouts. You can't teach a child that's not in the classroom. Some children will learn in spite of the school, but most of them depend upon the educational experience in the classroom. Truancy has a lot of other ties to it: crime, attitude, behavior. You very seldom see a truancy issue in an accelerated classroom environment, because most of the time the children that are skipping school are skipping either because they're ill prepared. It's like when I taught math. I found that a lot of people developed an attitude toward math. I don't like math. When you really break it down, you find out they really didn't understand it. And once they understand it, then they start realizing some personal success. And once you start enjoying personal success, the whole chemistry changes toward the school and your self-concept. And we've got to unlock that. We've got to find out who these children are, and we've got to deal with them in a preventative way rather than a corrective way. Too many times children are not in school and the parents don't know it. They're not notified, or they did not know until it reached appearance before the board, or the state attorney comes after them for non-school attendance. I caught 3 boys skipping on East 44th Street, and I asked them, I says, what are you doing? And they were about 6'3", and they said, well, we've been suspended. And I said, you've been suspended? And they had a suspension certificate. Now, they suspended them for skipping school. Now, you're talking about getting wrapped around your own axle. I mean, you don't do that. All you're doing is just, that's where they want to be. So we can do things, we can have a better communication with the community, and particularly the parents, and get truancy in the very beginning.
What about making every neighborhood school a magnet school with high expectations and increasing the number of alternative schools where unruly, unmotivated students can be taught in a stricter, more military-like direct instruction type of setting? Mr. Jordan first.
Well, if you're talking about making every school a magnet school, then, from where does the magnet draw? I mean, you can have a magnet school. Magnets are usually high concentrations of a specific subject matter that makes it a magnet in truest sense, where you can draw from other parts of the community. And we got into this heavy magnet program as part of the post-unitary status in the court order that we went through to make sure that we, number one, created opportunities in some of the older part of the city to utilize these schools and not just board them up and make sure they're properly used. If you start having a magnet school in every school, I don't think that would work. Now, if you're talking about having every school that has an exciting program, I think that has merit. But let me give you a little caution light here. And this is something that's going to have to be seriously dealt with. Duval County has, if you would line all the buses that we're running right now and put them 3 feet apart, they would reach over 8 miles. We have a busing tab right now of over $45 million. Now, when you start having magnets and it depends upon transportation, how are you going to spend your general revenue dollars? You have to make these prioritized decisions. The best thing to do is have an effective school, an exciting school in every community, and then have your specialized magnets for those programs that are so big and so different that a community school couldn't offer it.
Mr. Manuel?
Your specialized magnets obviously play an important role within our district, and they were created specifically, and all of the magnets programs were created for a specific reason at that particular time, obviously to increase diversity. I think what we have to also take a look at in every one of our neighborhood schools, we have an opportunity to build career academies within our neighborhood schools, which is very similar to some of the aspects of dedicated magnets per se. And that's an opportunity wherein we have the rigorous curriculum for a specific career for those particular kids, where teachers work as a team, working as a team, teaching a small group or a set group of kids. And so that's another way that, as what I call as an option to have a series of magnets in every school. This, again, gives kids the opportunity for that rigorous curriculum that's going on in dedicated magnets. And so that's another way. I would look at how do we put that in place. We have some of those already in place. We have some high schools that already have career academies, and I think we need to take a look at that and how that can be used in our neighborhood schools.
Okay, the next question. The federal government, under Title I, Chapter 1, ESEA, and No Child Left Behind, has infused the schools with billions of dollars for 35 years to improve the education of underprivileged students. The failure rate, though, this is according to the reader, is still dismal. What changes would you make so that the taxpayers get more return on their investment and the lives of these students will improve? Mr. Manuel?
Well, I think we have to assess what we're actually doing. Those things that are effective, we need to continue. That piece of this that is ineffective, then it needs to go away. And when we look at any kind of program or anything that needs for boys and girls in Title I programs, we need to look at what is effective, what is not effective. If it is not effective, then we don't need to be funding things that are not effective.
Mr. Jordan?
Washington, D.C. has the highest cost of per pupil cost in the nation. Money is not the answer. How you use the money is the answer. And that's why cost efficiency and program monitoring and coming up and being able to flush out some of the things that don't work. And in a bureaucracy, programs have legs of their own. Once they're in, it becomes like it's an entitlement. It's part of it. All this money that we've gotten from the federal government and from the lottery fund and our general appropriation, it's all a tremendous tool if it's properly used. And incidentally, in Washington, D.C., they have a voucher program up there, and the greatest participation of these vouchers are by their minority students. And they realize that there's an opportunity to get an education outside the public school system. But money is not the answer. How you use the money is the answer.
The next question. How closely will you watch and correct administration that fails to adhere to school board rules? Example given, principals who allow students to walk the halls with iPods, MP3 players, and cell phones. Mr. Jordan, first.
I've said from the very beginning that the most important component in an effective education environment is to have discipline. Without discipline, you have nothing. And that's one of the indicators of a school that does not have a policy that is focused on education. Because a lot of these things, whether you wear, how you wear your pants or whether you have an iPod or a cell phone, these become distractions. We are there to learn. Your taxpayers paid for this experience for the child to learn. The parent sends the child to school to learn. The teachers are employed so that we can facilitate learning. Anything that gets in the way or is a deterrent to the learning curve of an educational environment needs to be seriously dealt with. And again, it goes back, I've said at the very beginning, the opening comment, you give me a strong principal, and I'll show you a safe, secure, effective school.
Mr. Manuel.
First of all, there are policies that are in place. I think what we have to take a look at is the consistency of an individual there in a particular school. Yes, the leader is a key. The leader and good leadership has a culture in place that is consistent. So if a kid knows on the very first day of school, if I'm walking down the hall with my cell phone, it is going to be taken away from me and placed in a place, secure place, until my parent goes. I also know that if I do that on the 15th day, that's going to also occur. So we have to go back and take a very hard look at the consistency of following those policies. And it's not just one school. We have to make sure we are consistent system-wide. We have to look at things from a systematic approach. But that takes away from the culture of learning that I would hope that would be going on in every school. There's no need for you to have your cell phone, and there's no need for you to walk down the hall with an MP3 player going on in your ear. But there also needs to be said point blank that the culture of that particular school, the students need to know. Here is the culture of this particular school, and it's not only the leader. It has to be reinforced by the actual teachers that are part of that school. And I hope we would eventually go one step further, where the kids take an active interest in their particular school and engagement in the governance, and they too work toward policing that.
Next reader question, do you plan to take note of and correct administrative/principal assignments where faculty and staff turnover is disproportionately high? Mr. Manuel.
Well, as a board member, the board has only one employee, and that's the superintendent. The superintendent and his staff would be the individuals that would actually have to take a look and do the analysis. I would think, though, that the administration would take a look at several things as it relates to whether or not we have the right leader there at the particular school. Obviously, teacher turnover is one aspect of it. Obviously, when you look at whether or not there's performance of boys and girls, that would be another. I think also when you take a look at the actual culture of the school, where you assess through surveys to determine whether or not it is a culture of fairness, it is a culture of improvement, then those pieces there. But as far as a board member actually getting involved in the selection process of going on at the principal, then no.
Mr. Jordan.
Well, I think the stability of the administrative question that you pose is, it even starts with the superintendent. The board is a policy directing entity. You tell the superintendent, here are the policies that we, the board, are going to approve, and it's the job of the superintendent to carry it out. The superintendent can make recommendations, but we are constitutional officers of the state of Florida. It's our responsibility to give the superintendent direction. Now, I was on the school board 16 years. We went through 3 superintendents. In the past 8 years, they've had 3 superintendents. That's where the stability has to start. And I think the current superintendent is a good person. I think he's the right person at the right time for this job. And I think he's brought stability to an unstable situation. And I think that he will carry out and minimize some of this unnecessary turnover. But I think he's also going to select strong leaders for challenge schools.
Technology is the basis of the next question from our readers. How do you plan to equip schools with the latest technology more quickly? We have students who complete homework on updated versions of operating systems and cannot print or present PowerPoint lessons because the school's equipment is outdated. Let's start with Mr. Manuel.
Okay. I think technology is a key. I think you have to also take a look at, when we talk about technology, we have to take a look at the infrastructure that runs the technology. And in many cases, we need to go back and take a look. Do we have the actual infrastructure in place in schools in order to run the actual equipment that we want to run? as it relates to equipping schools with technology, I would encourage us to start taking a look at, instead of purchasing, to take a look at can we lease equipment? Can we actually lease equipment in such a manner? Because when you take a look at the technology, you have to refresh that technology every 2 to 3 years. It is changing constantly, and that costs. So this year I have the latest state of the art. Next year it's not the state of the art. So we need to take a look at how do we place technology and purchase technology. And I would suggest that we take a look at leasing technology as a quicker way of getting technology out into the actual schools.
Mr. Jordan.
You know, if you buy a computer today and you buy it on a 12-month zero interest plan, by the time you pay for it 12 months now, it's basically obsolete, or its opportunity to update is so dramatic that you'll be looking for a new one. I think we have to learn how to manage our resources better. You know, the lottery, since 1988, has provided the public school sector with over $423 million. We provided the school construction about $286 million. The lottery funds, some of them, other than bonding our school construction, can be used for upgrades and what have you. And I think that's the kind of things that we're going to have to be looking to. Even though lottery sales right now, I understand, are down, we've got to manage our resources and find a better way to keep up with the technology change. But it is true, the window of currency for a computer is quite limited. But we don't have to have the most gee-whiz equipment. If you're teaching basic computer skills in the formative years, they need to know how to travel on that computer rather than what then can the computer do. So I think there's an opportunity to look at this and come up with perhaps a program that will work for the changing environment.
Okay, the next question. When will the school board put some substance into a dress code for students and, in some cases, teachers? Mr. Jordan?
Well, thank you very much. You know, the way sometimes I was taught the way you dress, sometimes the way you behave. You can't beat good manners and dignity. If you want to have a school environment that's really focused around learning, you remove all the distractions. Years ago, there was a dress code policy. Administratively, it wasn't carried out. You go to a private school, and there's an interesting trait among private schools. I went to one at the end of Lone Star, and a church has it, Faith Christian Church. I went in, and the halls were just absolutely so quiet. There was excitement going on in the classroom, learning. And then when came time to change classes, I noticed all the children had on uniforms. And sometimes the way you dress is the way you behave. Again, we've proven that in the military. You show me a soldier that cares about his unit and the branch he's in, and I'll show you a sharp dresser. Suppose we just let the military wear any kind of uniform they wanted. What kind of discipline would follow that type of luxury or distraction? So I think that maybe it's time that either a strong dress code be employed with high expectations, and I said that in my opening remark, high standards in discipline. And one of the things that you have to deal with is some of this dress. I can't imagine some of these kids, the way they wear their pants. I know I'm not part of that culture, but to me it's disrespectful. And if you're going to have some of these types of behavior today in the school setting, I can assure you it's going to be distracting. And we can address that with a strong expectation or a school policy for uniforms.
Mr. Manuel.
Again, it goes back to the consistency of enforcement of that. We have a student code dress policy in place. It just needs to be consistently enforced.
That's right.
It needs to be consistently enforced. Now, several years ago, we went to the route of going with uniforms. And in that piece, we had an opt-out and opt-out policy. If you go back, if you actually go back and you look at the data during that particular time, the elementary schools the majority of the elementary schools were supportive and the kids wore their uniforms. You know, going back, and because I was there during that particular time and looking through those lenses again, probably what we should have started off was phasing that piece in. We probably should have started with the elementary and gradually move up. Many schools and many do that particular piece. I've had the opportunity in traveling throughout the Southeast and Latin America with Southern Association colleges and schools, and have seen that. If you go to school in Miami that I just finished doing a visit, there are over 400,000 kids in that particular school. They have an academy approach there. They're in uniforms. They're actually in uniform. And I asked the president of the student body, I say, why was this a decision? He said, no. This is something that we do with our academy. So they actually wear their particular uniform. We can do this. I just think we need to go back and look at it and how we actually implement it so that it's sustainable.
Next reader question. Why has the idea of an exit interview been eliminated when employees resign or retire? Is the school system afraid of finding out the real problems? Will the school system deal with the problems or just shove them under the rug? Mr. Manuel.
I don't know why the exit interview has been removed. I think you get good information when a person either retires or even when a person decides to leave your organization. You can take that information and that data, I would hope, to make the organization better. One of the pieces that I had in place when I was regional superintendent, and I asked every principal in my particular region, when a teacher leaves your school, then you need to do an exit interview to get information on why that particular person is leaving. Now, if you feel that the individual is not going to give you accurate information, then why not have that individual give the information to someone else on the staff, but capture the information. We want to make your organization and you want to make your school better. What better way is it to get this kind of information? I would go one step further sometimes. I think sometimes we need to ask parents to give us feedback. I said to a teacher one time, wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice? We always have parents to assess what's going on, but wouldn't it be nice for you to send something out to the kids and say to the parent, give me feedback on whether or not you think I'm doing a great job with your particular child?
Mr. Jordan.
In business, your critics are your best consultants. They're most usually free. They usually have an experience to tie their comments to. But when you're in an environment where there's fear and intimidation, then if that person is leaving that school or that employment, if they're laterally transferring to another department and you have fear and intimidation, you're probably not going to get much input from them. Maybe sometimes we need to have the old suggestion box where you can make a comment or point out a area of waste, and we have it. There are some areas of waste, and you will not subject yourself to fear and intimidation or being discriminated upon. That might be a way to get some constructive environment. Why the policy was eliminated, I didn't know it was eliminated. So I didn't. That's something that's an administrative issue that probably would come under the superintendent. But I don't know. I don't see that as a board policy. But if it's been eliminated indiscriminately, then we can make it a board policy and fix it.
Do you support special schools that focus on gifted students? Would they support vocational? Would you support vocational school training to help students who don't want to go to a university but would like to go to a 2-year college program? And we'll start with Mr. Jordan.
First of all, I have a problem with the word gifted. Does that mean all the other students are ungifted? I think that's a label that we need to get rid of. First of all, we have many programs today, and we have gifted education, and I can never forget the things that take place in the classroom and say, all right, now it's 2 o'clock, it's time for all the gifted students to go down to room 12, and then the rest of you sit there. That means, hey, I'm not gifted. I think that's a label that needs to be changed. But we should, all our children are gifted. They're gifted in different ways. And I don't have any problem with making opportunity available to students, but we don't need to necessarily have special schools for it, if that's what the question was asking. Every school should deal with the component that interests that child. As a teacher one time, I've caught a corn snake out in the yard, brought the snake inside the classroom. Now, I'm going to tell you, we had a science lesson that day that you would not believe. Even the boys in there that were potential discipline problems, I had 100% of their attention, because you can't put lids on kids. When the opportunity avails itself, you need to teach that point right then. And that's one of the problems that comes from the syndrome of FCAT, that teachers are being suppressed. But as far as gifted, all our children are gifted. They're gifted in different ways, and we should accommodate the child's need.
Howard Gardner talks about different kinds of giftedness, and I would agree with you, Mr. Jordan, on that. They are different. They are different ways of being gifted. Ask a child who is gifted and talented in music is also gifted. One that's gifted and talented in art, and I think we have to address that. I would not support having just a school specifically designed for gifted kids. I do think that we need to make sure that we take some of the strategies that we use in working with gifted kids, and some of those strategies are good in working with any kid, and use those particular strategies. As it relates, I think the last part of the question dealt with vocational.
Well, yes, what to do with them, supporting vocational schools for those who wish to go into two-year programs.
We again, I would go back and say to you, we have that opportunity right now through our career academies, because that's a way for a kid to do that as well as get post-secondary while he's there at that particular program.
Okay, we've spent the last hour with the two School Board District 1 candidates, Ken Manuel and Representative Stan Jordan. I'm Dan Scanlon for Jacksonville.com. Voting is in 2 weeks. You have your chance. Enjoy it. Thank you.